Hey guys, it's Chris, and I'm back with another video today. And today I want to talk about the Marvel MCU and the Spider-Man controversy. As many of you may know or may not know, 2 days ago I believe they reported, I believe it was originally Deadline, according to this article here, that a deal between Sony and Marvel was not struck. They did not come to an agreement trying to renegotiate the Spider-Man issue where Sony has the rights to Spider-Man and all that, but he's been allowed to be in the MCU and all the Avengers movies and the two standalone movies so far. That has now apparently come to a head, and they did not reach a new agreement. So I do think this is going to probably be rectified in some way. There's still a possibility, obviously, but I think this is just damn stupid. I think this is probably grandstanding. It all comes down to money. I won't get too much into the deal itself, but essentially, from my understanding, Marvel, at least in the previous deal, got 5% of all opening weekend box office profits or whatever, and then, of course, Sony kept the rest since they actually own the property. And I believe Marvel/Disney, of course, actually owns all the rights to merchandise for Spider-Man. But as of now, they went to the bargaining table again to kind of renegotiate this deal. And apparently what had happened here is, according again to Deadline here, is that they actually offered a 50-50 split of financing the movies. And of course that means 50% of profits from whatever they make on the Spider-Man franchise. So from my understanding, and according to these articles, Sony essentially turned that down right off the bat and said, no, we're not going that route, and didn't even stay at the negotiating table. They had just walked out apparently and said, no, we'll just keep Spider-Man and we'll keep him in our universe, and he can no longer be in the MCU. So that's where we stand right now as far as the negotiating and the potential deal that has not been reached. And what goes along with that, of course, is that Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios, will no longer produce Spider-Man movies. And that means that Spider-Man completely goes back to Sony, into their little Sony-verse as of now. So Tom Holland's Spider-Man or Peter Parker, the one we've come to love, most of us for the most part. I mean, there are some issues, obviously, for hardcore comic fans. But he is no longer now in the MCU. So all that stuff we just saw, all that canon, they're going to have to somehow write him off. And this is why I think this is completely ridiculous for Marvel to try to, grandstand or whatever they're doing and not allow him to stay in the MCU. I think it's a dumb move if they allow that to happen, all because of money. I mean, they're making enough damn money. How much do you need? I mean, Disney owns the damn world already. But at the same time, Sony is probably being an asshat as well. They're both going to try to grandstand in the media. That's what this is about. That's why this was released as far as, we're done negotiating. We're not even talking about it. It's over. He's out of the MCU. We own him, whatever. And they, I guess, want to plan on just putting him in their own Sony-verse or whatever they want to call it. And I guess some good news could be with that is that you can have a Spider-Man Venom movie. As a matter of fact, I had an article here where Kevin Feige here says that Spider-Man and Venom movie is very likely, but I think it's probably up to Sony. Now, this article here came out last month, I believe. Oh, no, I'm sorry, June the 20th it came out. And so now that's a lot more likely, I believe, as far as, Spider-Man and Venom having a movie together. Although now they've already screwed up the Venom origin story. Now they could go back and change it just a little bit. They did have the Venom prequel, so to speak, as far as life. And it's essentially the same story, except Spider-Man was not off-world. So they could make that happen similar to the way they did in the Sam Raimi version, where Venom, the symbiote, gets a hold of Peter Parker and all that. And maybe that'll give him the white spider on his chest. But anyway, I don't want to go too deep into that. I think that's just a possibility. I do think they will work this out at some point. But people are pissed off about this. I mean, Twitter blew up. The internet blew up about it. The MCU is a pretty big deal. There's a lot of fans out there. We just got I think, probably the best Peter Parker and Tom Holland that we've had. And nobody wants to see another reboot from Sony where he has to go back and watch Uncle Ben die again or whatever in the hell they're going to try to do. We're tired of reboots. We have the Spider-Man we want. Let him stay in the MCU. So even Jeremy Renner here, who plays Hawkeye, actually tweeted out something, I guess yesterday, saying, hey, Sony Pictures, we want Spider-Man back to the real Stan Lee, and Marvel, please, thank you. Congrats, hashtag Spider-Man rocks, hashtag please. So not only are fans outraged about this potential lack of a deal, I should say, but even some of the stars. And you got to think, too, that Tom Holland is probably pretty damn upset about this, too, because as of right now, he's just going back to Sony World, whatever. And again, that could include a Venom thing or whatever. But then we have to have this whole multiverse thing. And this is what I can't stand, because if this happens, if they don't actually reach a deal, the problem with me personally is, and Spider-Man being my favorite MCU character of all time since I was a child, the problem is here, we just saw him in all these movies, his standalone as well as the Avengers movies, and now they can no longer even mention Spider-Man's name. They would have to essentially kill him off in some way, or say, you know, the Spider Kid or something died or whatever, or he went to whatever, or he retired. I don't know how they're going to do it, if they even get to that point. But this is going to be a problem, especially now since they just killed off Tony Stark, and they kind of set up in the last Spider-Man movie, Far From Home, where Peter Parker's kind of his protege and coming up to kind of take the lead, so to speak. And not necessarily leading the Avengers or anything like that, but just one of the main staples, obviously, of the Avengers, one of the most popular characters. I mean, let's be real, Hawkeye is not going to carry the MCU, so this is the problem I have with it. And then you go over to Sony, and we have to watch a new Spider-Man reboot or a series or whatever of Spider-Man movies, and then we have to pretend like none of that shit ever happened to him. The same Tom Holland, the same Peter Parker that we've seen in the MCU, now we have to pretend, if, again, this comes to fruition, that it just never happened. That he did none of that stuff. He can't mention the Avengers. He can't mention the Snap. He can't mention Tony Stark. He can't mention anything regarding the MCU. That's kind of the way it was before Disney took over Fox. They could not say the word mutant as far as the X-Men and all that. Now that they own that, they can, of course, use the word mutant and bring the X-Men into the whole MCU. And on top of that, for example, he goes back to the Sony-verse. They can do a Venom movie or whatever with Spider-Man as far as a crossover and have them in the world, but he can't mention anything or anyone in the MCU. For example, Happy. He works with Happy now very closely. We just saw the whole storyline with Happy and Aunt May. He couldn't even mention Happy. That is an MCU Marvel character. So it's like he would have to go pretend that none of this stuff happened to him, none of this shit that he just went through with going to space and being snapped out of existence and all that, that would all just simply go away. It would vanish like a Thanos snap, I guess. So it just wouldn't work. Even if they had a great movie, a great Spider-Man movie visually and story-wise with Venom or whatever it may be, it just would not work, because we're seeing the same character in the same suits and all that, who got his tech from Tony Stark, now cut off from that whole world. And so they would have to go back to a reboot style thing. And of course, all of us as fans would just have to pretend that none of this ever happened. But I think this is just all stupid. I think it's a lot of grandstanding in the public to try to put pressure on each other. But I do think ultimately they will make a deal. And there's actually an article here. Sony still wants a deal to keep Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but Disney is reportedly finished negotiating. So that's where we're at right now. They say they want him in the MCU, but they don't want to give up more money, which I can understand that to a degree. But Marvel was the one apparently done negotiating, which I don't buy that at all. I think this is a grandstanding move to put pressure on Sony. This is what these big companies do. It's just ridiculous that they would even consider letting Spider-Man leave the MCU now, after he's probably become at least the number 2 or 3 character in this whole group of superheroes in the MCU now that Tony Stark is dead. So anyway, guys, I'll leave it there. I just want to give you a heads up and kind of keep you up to date. This is a huge deal in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the whole comic book superhero movie genre going on right now, with Phase 3 just ending in the MCU, and Phase 4, they just announced that, last month, I believe. So anyway, I think this is ridiculous, and I'm hopeful, and I think they will come to a conclusion at some point and come to an agreement. But again, it's going to take probably a few months or whatever of grandstanding. But somebody will come back to the table, because I always brag on Marvel, right? As far as, especially in the Marvel versus DC worlds, Marvel always has their shit together. They have things planned out in the long term, Endgame, and then Far From Home wrapped up, 12 years of movies and planning. So I cannot believe, honestly, that they would let Spider-Man go. They're going to have to take less money, whatever it is, but I don't think they're really going to let him go. So in the end, I think we'll be okay. Hopefully they come to their senses and stop all the bullshit and come and make a deal. We don't have to worry about it right now anyway. It's going to be a while before there's new Spider-Man or Avenger type stuff or crossovers. But in the meantime, as Phase 4 starts, we're not going to see Spider-Man appear in anybody else's movie. For example, Black Panther 2, you can't have Spider-Man show up and help Black Panther out or whatever, because he's simply not in the MCU, just like that. So anyway, guys, I'll leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think about this? Is it all bullshit? Do you agree with it? Would you like to see Spider-Man and Venom? I would certainly like to see that, but I would rather it be the other way around, where Venom comes to the MCU and instead of Spider-Man going to this Sony-verse or whatever. So I don't want to see another reboot of Spider-Man and Uncle Ben die one more time. Anyway, guys, as usual, thank you for all the support, especially you guys on Patreon, and a huge shout out to my executive Patreon SmokeScreen producers. And if you dig what I do here, please give these videos a like, comment, and share. And also, of course, be sure to subscribe to get everything and click that damn notification bell twice so you're notified when I drop a new video. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.